This conference will now be recorded.
Good morning, everyone, and thank you for joining us this morning at Coffee with Nahara. My name is Janet Borland. I'm the Association Director for the National Native American Human Resources Association. And for those with us for the first time, Nahara is a tribal-led nonprofit organization focused on the HR profession and tribal leadership. We are now in our 28th year of existence, continuing to advance and advocate for Native American tribes. In today's session, the 2024 HR Megatrends, 3 global trends impacting your business. I'm so excited that our platinum sponsors at UKG each year identify the most significant trends impacting the workforce and provide industry leading research and insights to help organizations proactively implement strategic, meaningful change. And they're going to let us know what made the list for 2024. I'm so excited that Erika Sandoval is with us today. Erika is a global senior partner with the HCM Strategic Advisory Group at UKG and has spent 15 years in the area of people and organizational practice, specifically in DEI, L&D, HR, organization and professional development, and facilitation and consulting. Having lived and worked across the world, and we're so happy she's joining us today, Erica has experience in leading and guiding strategic and cross cultural initiatives that impact organizations in a global environment. Today's session will be recorded and will be on the Friday on Friday at the Nahara YouTube channel. And please make sure I started recording the session. Just make sure you have your camera off and please utilize your chat box to ask any questions or share any comments, experience that you'd like to share in the group. If you are THRP certified, Barb Griffin will be notified that you attended today's session and you will be credited some THRP credits. And without further ado, I would love to introduce to you to Erika Sandoval.
Thank you so much, Janet, for that wonderful intro. I'm excited to be here with you all. I think everything is up and going. I do have access to see the chat, but Janet will be helping me. If there are more specific questions, we can also wait till the end. So I'm excited to be presenting with you all, as Janet mentioned, the 3 mega trends that we have identified at UKG. Just before I start into the presentation, I want to introduce myself again and just a little bit about our team at the Human Insights team at UKG. So we're a group of thought leaders, researchers, where we put together these things such as these megatrends. We present at national conferences. We help in advising with customers and prospects. So that's a little bit about our group and this unique niche that we bring. But one thing that we bring forward of our research umbrella at the Workforce Institute is this idea where it's our global think tank, where we have also a group of business leaders and industry experts and HR influencers who really also provide insights into these megatrends. And each year we put together through a group of international team of UK researchers, specifically these 3 specific ones. Some of these may resonate with you. Some of these may be, new information that we're presenting to you. But I think all 3 of them really can tailor and have specific insights into organizations at a global level. And I'm excited to present those with you all. So feel free to use the chat. I'm excited to start with you all. So let's go ahead and get going. So I think one thing that's really differentiated as we're moving forward and we're really coming out of this pandemic and things that we've experienced in HR. And as Janet mentioned, I've been in the field, so I understand a lot of the pain points that many of you have been facing, but really understanding this human-centric approach. And that's something that we're really going to see starting moving forward. A lot of organizations have already pledged their commitment to really move forward in a human-centered perspective. And that's something that we're going to see, and we're seeing even more at UKG through our HR technology, but also in our practice. And we know that this is something that is going to continue. So this really provides a roadmap to also for us to think for, as a follow and a forward-thinking organization. So let's start with the 3 mega trends. I'm going to present the three that we have here, and then I'm going to go in depth with each one. The first one is specifically talking about redefining the employee and employer relationship. This really means that we can't really apply a one size fits all, and I'll go into the details of what that means for our organizations. The second one is what we're calling from buying and borrowing to building and mining. What essentially this means is that we're really starting to see organizations dive internally into their organizations to really look forward, to see what kind of skills people are bringing and how they can be developed within their organization. And then the third one is this impending environmental, social governance gut check. We'll talk a little bit more about what that means. I think for a lot of organizations, when they see ESG, oftentimes they're like, oh, we're not practicing that, or maybe it's more on a global or larger organizations. But once you start hearing what this trend means, you'll actually start to see there's a lot of correlations with a lot of organizations of what they're doing around these realms within their communities and within their workspace. So let's go ahead and get started. And yeah, Janet has just said, please use your chat. I will be checking. Sometimes I go off and I start talking. I'm very passionate about these topics and I don't get to see the chat. So again, the first one is this not one size fits all. And this is really important when we're really thinking about employees in our organization and this entire employee life cycle in our organizations. But one thing that we know for sure is that employees are not engaged in the workplace. We see this in the United States, but we also see this on a global scale. So in global engagement, we see that this has nearly doubled over the past 15 years, but there has been an increase from 12% to 23%, which I know is not super encouraging, which provides us an opportunity to really start engaging with our workforce. When we look at it from a business perspective, we know that employees who are not engaged and are actively disengaged represent 8.8 trillion in untapped productivity. So, I'm not even going to ask how many of you are hiring because I'm pretty sure I probably know the response to that. But I think it's important to think about also the other business implications that means for us. What does it mean when someone doesn't stay in our organization or someone doesn't stay the 30, 60, 90, those important pieces that we talk about in HR. I think this is an important critical point for us in HR to really think about how we're engaging our staff and our workforce. And I think one thing that we don't talk about often enough is this perspective of managers. I spend a lot of time in organization and with other organizations really talking about frontline workers. We know after all represents 80% of the global workforce. But one thing in particular I think that we haven't spent enough talking about is the managers and how much managers, especially middle managers, are starting to feel the heat. We conducted a study at UKG through our Workforce Institute where we actually surveyed managers, and we know that they're more often stressed than their actual team members, and we know that, and more actually say that they're feeling often or always feeling burned out at 25%. So that's a pretty high number that we see. So when we're talking about this employee-employer relationship, we really also have to make sure that we're including our managers into this employee engagement strategies that we're diving into, our technology, especially for our middle managers, and I'll talk a little bit about more what that means. So what does this mean for HR professionals such as you on this call or organizational leaders? I think this is an important opportunity for all of us to really think about these challenges and what we can do in our organization. So I want to dive a little bit about what the research is telling us and what we're seeing in organizations that we're working with. One thing specifically, and as Janet mentioned, I've spent a lot of time really working in the area of diversity, equity, and inclusion. But one of the things that during my time in employee relations is really thinking about some of the general items that have come to the discussion board when I've been in those positions. And one of the key things that always comes across is generational differences. And I think some of you probably understand this specifically when you really dive into some of the differences in the workplace. Generations actually play a huge part of differences in the workplace. And it's a matter of how do we work through these and how do we understand them? And one of the things is that we know that generalizations are insufficient. And I think there's a lot of stereotypes. I think we saw so much generalizations and things that were happening in the last 10 years on millennials in the workplace. And, when I'm talking about this topic with folks, I always say, millennials are driving like minivans now and they have older children, some, et cetera. And so I think what we saw is that everyone was painted into this box, and now we have a new generation in the workplace. And as you can imagine, you know which generation I'm going to talk about, and these are Gen Zers. So just by show in the chat, how many of you have Gen Zers in your workplace? If you could just put in your chat that you have Gen Zers in your workplace, I would love to see that, or maybe some colleagues that are on this call. Because it's an important piece and an important element when we're talking about what it means when we're putting folks into certain boxes. But what we know is that age, life stages, personality traits, life experiences all equate to different work styles and different expectations. And so we specifically know that when it comes to Gen Z. And I think that's an important piece as we're seeing folks that are working in talent thinking about ways, how do we recruit folks that are in Gen Z? How do we looking at performance evaluations in Gen Z? So this is an important thing to think about. But also on the reverse side, when we're talking about Gen Z and millennials, but also our Gen Xers and our baby boomers in our organization. So we really have to think about every aspect that these folks are bringing into the workplace, and each of these areas that I'm talking about, to really think about the personality and this life journey of these employees, and their life experiences are critical into the employee-employee relationship that I'm talking about. One thing that where we see this impact of work specifically is really at Great Place to Work. They've done incredible research to really look at to see, and employees really stress about 88% wanting to really work at an organization with purpose and trust. And this is a key component I often talk about is if you don't have trust, it's going to be incredibly hard for you to move the needle forward into other topics into your organization, like diversity, equity, and inclusion, or talking about retention in the workplace, etc. We really have to start talking about the trust and what that means also for our middle managers. So we know that in a Great Place to Work, we know that research shows us that we have to have a sense of trust in the workplace. And so as you can see some of the stats here about folks that are surveyed, 85% believe their work has special meaning and isn't just a job when they feel this in their workplace. 88% feel that they can make a difference. 85% enjoy psychologically a healthy work environment, right? They can show up and truly be themselves in the workplace. And 89% look forward to coming to work. And the other part is 90% feel like they can truly be with themselves. Let me see. I think I'm getting a chat here. 1 second.
Sorry, Erika.
Yes.
It was me. It was me.
Uh-huh.
I have a question for you in regards to all the generationals. Have you seen that organizations really cater to each? Because we all in different generations have different needs, right? So
Mm-hmm.
have you seen organizations really focus on millennials, what they like, or with practice being that, common practice, black and white, but do organizations cater to different generational employees differently? Have you experienced anything like that?
Great question. And the one thing that I really want folks to think about, I think for myself, even growing up, or what we're taught in school is really this golden rule, right? Treat others the way you want to be treated. But I really challenge organizations to take it a further step, and think about the platinum rule. Treat folks the way they want to be treated. And I think that's important for any generation. And we are seeing that, especially even in hiring practices and how folks are being onboarded. I know we're seeing more folks use TikTok for hiring practices. We're seeing short micro type learning modules for folks so that they understand learning styles. The way feedback is given in organizations is another component. I think that's an excellent question, Janet, and we are starting to see a significant pivot. After we're done with this presentation, I want you can start Googling Gen Alpha, which is the new generation that we're going to be talking about soon, maybe in your workplaces as well. Yeah, I'm throwing in another one, right? And that one's, some of you may have children that are Gen Alpha, but I think it's a matter of adaptation as we're going with this. So excellent question. Thank you. And then let's continue here with the last part. So the other part here is 60% of employees are worried about losing their job to AI. And I don't know about you all, but this is a hot discussion in every piece that, that we see AI. And I think, working in a tech company, we see this even more questions that I get from folks. And this is an important thing because as HR leaders, this is something that we're also needing to communicate to our employees. According to the study, we know that globally a 2% reduction is projected over the next 5 years. And what actually this does is present an opportunity for us, right, Joe? So just as I was talking about adaptability as we're moving through different generations, it's the same way with technology, right? We're seeing different things move really, really fast. I think this year AI just became even more of a hotter discussion. I would say in the last 2 years, it was just kind of having a discussion. And now we're moving forward, especially when it talks about in the workplace. And one thing that I think that often there's this public perception and concern is AI taking over jobs. And we did a study at the Workforce Institute where people actually are unaware that they're already using AI on a daily basis. And across these different workforces, as you can see here, service operations is the only function in which respondents expect to see a decrease in work size due to Gen I. And that's also going to be, implications can be different for what that looks like. As you can see here, it will be impacted in the workforce. But I think more than anything, especially for us as HR and leaders, is really giving that message to our employees, to our managers, that you are not being replaced by a machine. Rather, how are we going to use augmentation and really all of the perceptions that we have with AI and work together with artificial intelligence? And we're going to talk a little bit more about the skill, particularly around this topic, on the second one when it comes to mining. But I think it's important to really think about how we're bringing AI and working together with it, because it's something that's not going away. And with that, I really want to end this component really talking about the technology piece. Really, technology promises personalization at a scale, and I think we really need to think about that. When I'm usually presenting with folks, I like to talk about my friend Toby. So I don't know if any of you watch The Office, but even if you don't watch Toby, I think oftentimes that's the perception of what many of us are in HR is, just having pizza parties and doing this component. But that's just one piece of HR that folks that are not in this field do not understand. And one thing that is really, really important is as we're moving along in different HR practices is the strategic approach that we're taking into our practice and how we are really embracing technology and using it to personalize our experiences to help us in our job, right? Work smarter, not harder. I think that's important. And what we can see is that generative AI presents an opportunity for us to boost engagement for things like providing personalized message and interactions with our individuals. Doesn't mean that we're going to replace the human conversation, but actually can help us create those messaging, natural language processes, right? So we can see how folks are feeling, to see what's trending, perhaps where we maybe see gaps in our organization, where we need to inform the manager, perhaps the manager needs particular type of feedback on how to have these conversations with their workforce. This really provides an opportunity to personalize that perspective with our staff. And with that, I'm going to leave these 3 action steps for really this particular one. And really, I think it's important to have these regular check-ins with our folks, right? I know I mentioned the technology piece, but this is really the trust piece that I'm talking about, asking them how they feel, who they are, getting to know them specifically, what are the things they want, what makes them excel in their workforce, and really training our managers on this is particular so that they have the right questions. I think I've seen countless studies where a lot of managers are in their first year of management were actually promoted more often because they knew how to do the job, not because they were given like the soft skills, right? Having challenging conversations and so forth. So we really have to think about how are we providing and educating our employees and giving them those resources. And then this last part is using AI to like boost engagement and creating these customized messages and really work together with AI as things are developing. So I want to see if there's any questions yet. So I'll check here on the chat here. Okay, let's go to the next one. All right,
Erika?
we are going to, yes, Janet?
Sorry, it's Janet. It's Janet again.
Yeah.
Sorry, I have a question in regards to AI.
Yes, totally.
Do you recommend organizations sending out, and I know that we do employee surveys, some do once a year, some do a quarter, but do you feel that it's a good way to really gauge to see what team members are going through by utilizing AI and getting their opinions on what they would like to see, as well as applicants? You don't want to lose that human element, but at least utilize AI to streamline processes.
Mhm.
What do you think, or can you give us like an example of how to incorporate AI in our organizations?
Yes. So great question. The surveying is an excellent piece. And so before I go into the surveying piece, I think it's important to think about that component that we just talked about, trust, right? You
Yeah.
really have to ensure that you've had this trust and this understanding with your workforce and created that, because then you're going to go create a survey. Or sometimes I think folks, maybe on this call, I don't know how you feel about surveying, but it's really not so much that we're over surveying, which is one component of it, but it may be survey fatigue. We are surveying way too much and not giving actual outcomes or things that follow up with our surveys.
Right.
What AI gives an opportunity for us to ask the questions that we need at the time that we need to be asking them, the right type of questions. I think that's an important piece. And then the follow up piece as well. Like once we've gauged what our employees are talking to us and what their suggestions are, or what they need, then we need to be able to also use this augmentation, this relationship piece to also provide that feedback for our staff. And that's just one way of engaging our workforce. So excellent
Mhm.
question, Janet.
Thank you.
Uh-huh. So let's go into the second one, which is this buying and borrowing and to building and mining. But basically what this is saying is that we really have to look internally at our workforce and really beyond this, the traditional skill sets where we look outside and really look at talent in that way. I think this is an opportunity that presents for many organizations around the world that we've been working with at UKG, and this presents an excellent opportunity for us to think internally. I know a lot of states are doing that, which I'll talk about here in a second. But we know that by 2030, more than 85 million jobs could go unfilled because there are not enough skilled people to take them. And I think one thing that I always talk about with folks as I'm talking about access to opportunities is I don't like to use the word lack of skills. I think there's an opportunity gap or lack of access to these skills. And so this is an opportunity for us in these organizations to really think about how we're really bringing skills into the workforce. And here's another stat by the Bureau of Labor Statistics here in the United States with 9.58 million job openings, just 5.96 million people officially unemployed. There are still more than 1.6 unfilled positions for every job seeker in the US. So there's still, again, an opportunity. There's a business opportunity for us to really think about how we're really leveraging skills in the workspace because of this. And one thing I want to talk about is this aging global population. And I think it's not just here in the United States that we're seeing this. We're seeing this in Europe, in Asia, Europe leading in this particular discussion, which some countries in Europe are really leading conversations into upskilling, such as Germany. But that we know that by 2050, 16% of the world and 25% of the folks living in Europe and North America will be over the age of 65. So we really have to think about how we are helping folks who maybe are closer to retirement if they're wanting to think about skills that they're wanting to have, but also the skills that we have of our current workforce. This is going to be critical to really think about this particular type of programming. And I think this presents an opportunity for us to really think about our own skill sets that we have in our organization. So there's two perspectives that we actually have, and we see this particularly around the skill set. One is the executive view of what leadership is telling us. So in this particular study, we see that 92% of executives say that the US workers aren't skilled as they need to be. And so we can start seeing here particular things like 45% feel that they're missing out on growth opportunities, 34% feel the product development is suffering, and 30% think that the company profits are being hurt. So some of you may work with leaders that perhaps have stated some of these, and I think it's important to consider also the other side, which is the employee view. And when you ask employees, in this particular study we see from the World Economic Forum is that only 49% have really completed training that bridged skill gaps. And that's where I'm talking about this opportunity for access. And Janet, for me, education is key. I'm a first-gen college graduate, but I also think that not everyone, wants to go to university, or not everyone has the opportunity or access to that. So there are other ways that we can build skills within our organization, which I'm going to talk about, and an opportunity for us to really think about how we're reskilling and what that opportunity may be to really invest in this particular piece. And so let's talk about specifically what that may be and what that looks like into our organizations. And the first one here is finding your hidden talent. What we know from countless research saves money and boosts productivity. And we know what this tells us is that traditional recruitment and permanent employees from outside the organization are really become a focus, I think, in hiring practices. But this is what it's giving us an opportunity to look internally. I think oftentimes we see, in talent, folks really wanting to go outside, but we really have to think about how, as organizations, we must build within and really start thinking about how are we going to upskill and reskill our employees that we have to really help them into the organization. And one way that we can do this, presenting this to our own leadership, is thinking about like impact that this has. We really need to look at the way we're hiring, assess candidates on skills, as what I just discussed, versus education. Jen, I'm based in the state of Colorado, and I know in Colorado we've put all of our state jobs have removed actual degrees into the descriptions, and we're seeing more of this at the federal level. I think this week I saw President Biden was signing something into place as well for government jobs. So other states as well are taking this into consideration and thinking about, what is the pipeline that we can build by looking at this approach. And if we look at this particular graph here, using this approach, talent pipelines can increase by nearly 10 times globally and 19 times in the US. So this really presents an opportunity. We're seeing this even, helps create diversity into the workplace. We see more opportunities happening. And like I mentioned earlier, other countries in the world are starting to do this as well. I know Germany really, as there may be a gap year in education. They're calling it like a skills opportunity, where some folks coming out of high school or prior to high school or while they're in high school can actually gain skills on the job that can go directly into like an apprentice program, which is awesome. And so I'm just curious, in the chat, if any of you are there, do any of you have any of this type of programming in your organization? Are you all doing any type of apprentice or any type of like mentoring or job shadowing or access? I'm just curious what's out there. So if you could type in the chat, I would love to hear more from you all, what kind of things your organization is doing, particularly in this avenue. So I'll check, and then Janet can also help me monitor the chat. And let's see here. One thing, as we're looking at ways on how to do this, that some of you may have, is talking about these internal promotions, because it actually provides an opportunity to improve culture. Your internal candidates already know your culture, so they're going to be even more passionate to want to stay there given opportunities and so forth. And this is some of the ways that we've seen organizations, or some organizations I've worked with, really spot hidden talent, right? Folks may be wanting new challenges, may be wanting to resolve complexities, etc. And so this is an important thing to really think about as you're looking at your workforce and really looking at employee engagement and retention, how this can really help. And it actually can help our employee brand. I don't know about you, Janet, but one thing, the Yelps of the world, and where we're looking at reviews, one thing to keep in mind is how organizations, how candidates are viewing your organization. It's really easy to go into something like Glassdoor or other type of areas, even on LinkedIn or such, and actually see reviews. And this can really help your organizations. And let me see, I do see a comment coming here. I was working for a property that was doing shadow programming. However, working in gaming has to be approved by the Gaming Commission, but it's great to develop at property dealers, chefs, etc. Thank you, Jan. I love it. Yeah, I think this presents an opportunity to really think about, as you mentioned, Janet, the Gaming Commission. I think this is an opportunity to really think about even some of the skills that are within. So thanks for sharing that. All right, so as we're moving forward, I'm going to bring AI again, because I think it's an opportunity to think about performance. And I had mentioned this earlier, working hand in hand. The example that I want to give when I'm talking about skills, I'll give one example. Actually, it was when I was at Nahara. I went to eat at a restaurant. It was near Tempe, and I met up with a friend, and we were at a Thai restaurant. And there was at the Thai restaurant, and the waiter took our order, and when I turned around, there was a robot, Janet, bringing me my food. And I was just like, wait a second, what's happening? It was like literally coming to my table. It knew who ordered what. The waiter did come over and was able to push the food and guide it over. But then I asked the waiter, does it always do that? And the waiter said, no, actually, sometimes I need to come over and guide which plate goes to which direction. Sometimes the robot breaks down. Sometimes I need to guide the robot to the direction it needs to go. So that is a prime example where I'm talking about, using AI to help the waiter. There was one waiter in the restaurant that was pretty full. For the waiter was allowed to actually do other things that was happening, run the register, be the hostess, and all these around of things of what was happening. So as we can see here, there is an opportunity to work hand in hand as an opportunity in that. And this particular, what we see here is the impact of AI on performance and working conditions. And it's something that we're going to be talking about, I think, more and more, and especially when we're talking about skills. And let's talk a little bit further what we mean by this. I think this particular study, as we can see here, is that people don't know how to use it, right? They share of employers saying lack of skills is a barrier to adopting AI. And I think this is, again, an opportunity for us to think about how can we, work hand in hand to really augment these skills. And a study that we did at UKG specifically around this is also around workforce, human resource and workforce technology. We surveyed over 4,000 employees in 10 different countries. And so this was important to think about. Employees were really worried about this discussion. And so I think we need to, as leaders, really think about what can we do to really help augment this process, and what is AI going to mean for us in the workplace, especially for us in HR or for our employees. And with that, these are the 3 steps. Oh, yeah, Janet?
Erika, sorry, can I just chime in? I just needed just to give my 2 cents.
Absolutely.
I think that AI is great, but what happens is, especially if you were to bring something in an organization, it's, you really need to train your employees, like what it's for and how to use it. At times it's like you get a product, but the training doesn't get down to our employees. So unfortunately, they have the experience on something that doesn't work, or what happens when it doesn't work? Why are we using this? Do you see an issue of pushing down the information to those that are using it every single day?
Great question. And I think you mentioned something that's so important with any type of technology, especially when we're talking about, like, for example, frontline workforce, et cetera, is the communication strategy. Any type of business strategy, Janet, I think this is critical. Let's say it's a DE&I strategy. Let's say it's a new wellness program. We have to communicate this to our employees. There is so much lack of, I think, communication that gets lost in the middle, where we put a lot of pressure on the managers to communicate or to train our employees on a new process, on a new technology, et cetera. And that has implications. And I'm glad you mentioned, like, gaming, as the gaming industry, which is very frontline with customers, right? Those have direct correlations with customer service. If we're not training our employees properly on a piece of equipment or technology, or maybe there's a special or a sale happening, like what happens in retail, and we don't communicate that, that has direct correlation with customer experience. So if we want our customer experience to be exceptional, we have to be able to tie excellent and exceptional employee experience with that. And that means training, that means communicating, et cetera. Does that help answer your question?
Yes, ma'am. Thank you.
Okay, let me move forward here. And let's go to our third one. And this is the one where oftentimes I get a lot of questions, is impending environmental, social governance check. And this one is important to think about, and it can be worded in so many different ways. I think depending on the region where I'm at and the industry that I'm at, this is an important topic to really think about how we're presenting this. And I think everyone experiences it different. And I think it's like when I'm presenting you in D&I, some folks can get uncomfortable, but I think it really comes down to a couple things. I'm going to present a couple of those and see what that means. But from a business standpoint, I just want to paint a picture of where we're at and what research is really showing us. We know that our research is giving us, is showing us that there are industry practices happening across the globe. And we know at S&P 500 companies are publishing their ESG, environmental social governance reports. We know that 70% are publishing from the Russell 1000. But what this really means is that folks are stepping up and they're publishing this information. They're seeing that it's good for business. There's countless studies out there that shows when you are transparent in these type of concerns and issues, it is good for business, and it really helps organizations in that way. So I want folks to think about it in that way as we're having the discussion. The other piece that is important to talk about is this consumer support for ESGs on a global scale. So I'm going to talk about it here in the United States, what that's looking like, but actually globally, we're seeing respondents really embracing this type of experience. And it depends. Every region is very, very different. We know in some parts of the world, talking about gender in the workplace, for example, in Latin America, we're seeing this in Asia, where the amount of women in the workplace is taking precedence right now, really thinking about how do we really help women come into leadership positions, etc. And in Europe, which is its own unique aspect. So, Europe is interesting because it's a lot like when I'm talking to HR folks in the US, it's like California, right? It has its own rules and sets that the EU puts forward, especially around these topics. So it's important to think about on a global scale, this is the direction we are moving. We are not going back. I don't see it. I think one thing that we are seeing and what this particular megatrend is telling us that it is a complex thing for organizational leaders. I think we're seeing some pull back on these efforts due to political backlash, which what we're seeing here in the United States. And while organizations may be ambitious, this presents an opportunity to really be transparent on these efforts. And what this means is in some cases, some organizations are asking, right? I think in a world where we're so transparent and so open and things can become so public. And, I mentioned TikTok, Janet, because I'm seeing a lot of organizations like Chipotle, right? Hiring with means such as TikTok, but it's also a way where people go in and talk about their organizations. And so not only are employees looking at this, but customers are looking at this as well as products, or what is my experience at that store, or et cetera. So we really have to think about it in this perspective as well. And this is really an opportunity is what this is really presenting, and especially for CEOs and organizational leaders. So what we see here specifically is publicly traded companies with highly inclusive workplaces thrive before, during and after the recession. And what this is something that countless research has shown, not just in this, but the way I like to talk about it is even during the recession or even during what we just saw during the pandemic, organizations who took the time to care for their employees, who really took the time to humanize their employees. That's a critical piece when folks are like, oh, I don't understand how you can apply ESG. I'm like, how do you treat your employees, right? The pay piece is just one component. Of course, employees want to get paid. We all go to work because we want to get paid. But the other piece is, do I feel like I make a difference in the workplace? Do I feel like I can belong and be my true self in the workplace? Do I feel that I am just humanized, right? I think that's an important component. And so we know that those organizations that took the time to really create that trust and that transparency, which we talked about at the beginning, are actually the folks who have come out stronger. And we see this with this particular study, and we're seeing it more and more in organizations who have taken the time to really value and put that forward. So let's talk about in an organization and what that can mean. There may be a lot of questions on this topic, so I'm happy to delve a little bit more. But what we see here is, while 89% of employees work for companies that have these type of programs, we're seeing that employees feel that they're not doing enough or not designed to do what that is. And so I think this, again, presents an opportunity for us to really think about what are those programs that we're putting in place to listen to our employees. Or I'm just curious if any of you have any type of groups in your workplace, like a mom's group. We see parenting groups. We see women's leadership groups. We see vets, people who may come from supporting vets as another one. I'm just curious in the chat if any of your organizations provide some sort of a support group in that way specifically. So I'm going to look at the chat and see if any of you guys have any of that going on in your organization, or perhaps a group that gives back to the community, to the tribe, etc. So I'm going to check here. Or Janet, if you know of anything, we'd love to hear more on this.
I've been HR for many years, and I'm aging myself, and I'm really proud to see that there are more wellness groups, mental health groups, because back in the day, the only place that we had, back in the 80s and 90s, was just your EAP program. And it's more than an EAP program, and I just love to see all these groups developing.
Yes, Janet, and you mentioned one that's critical is this mental health component. And I think, I think for a lot of us in HR, I know I was in HR during the pandemic, which was an interesting time where all of a sudden had to be like COVID experts, but also mental health experts, right?
Yeah.
And I think this is an important discussion to talk about. We know that, the U.S. Surgeon General has put forward the impact, a whole study on what workplace stress and other, as we're juggling multiple things, can mean for employees and how they show up in the workplace. And I think it is important. That's one area that we're going to see trending is this type of opportunities for folks to be able to openly talk about mental health in the workplace and talk about programs and how do we support our employees in this particular space. So thank you for bringing that up. That's a very important topic that I think we're going to be seeing more and more. So where do we see these type of programs based on research? Where is an opportunity for us to invest and increase? And these are just a list of different ones where folks, there's just like a whole array. Whereas, for example, employers say they're making DI changes, but employees don't see meaningful progress. The one that stands to me is right towards the middle of the green, where we're talking about employees don't feel respected and employees want managers to recognize their strengths. And again, this is where I was talking about sometimes the wordage can be different for some folks, but this is just basic. How do we treat folks, like they matter in the workplace? Like what kind of recognition programs are in place? So that's another question I wanted to ask in the chat. What kind of recognition programs do you all offer in your workplace? What does that look like? Because as we can see here, something so simple, we already know as folks want to be paid more, but this human element, of course, of like, my manager recognizing my strengths, or if I'm a manager, is leadership recognizing my strengths. So I want to see in the chat if any of you have some sort of recognition program or what those look like. I love asking this question because organizations get so creative on this topic. So I'm going to check the chat here. Anyone? Janet, do you have anything to add on that one?
Gosh, no, I do. I'm a little curious if we were to be able to drill down, like employees don't feel respected or employees want managers to recognize their strengths. Like, what are some of the things like, is it employees don't feel respected the way their manager speaks to them or because they didn't get the shift that they wanted? What are some of the things, or maybe you don't have, based on the DI areas that are failing? I'm just curious.
That's a great question. So I want to turn to the study that I think a lot of us on this call are very familiar with that Gallup's done for many years is the relationship that the employee has with their manager, right? We know that has significant impact on the employee's well-being. We know that that has impact on the employee wanting to stay in the workplace, that direct relationship that employee has with their manager or may not have. And so I think when we're talking about recognizing their strengths, besides like surveying and asking these type of questions of the direct manager, which is another way that we can gauge what that looks like, is also looking at like turnover rates. I think that's one way that you can look at it, looking at a particular manager. It's not to say that the manager, perhaps is, it's the issue is the manager. Perhaps it could be an issue of the manager isn't trained in XYZ or hasn't had the proper guidance. If there's particular, if we see a high turnover of this manager and we see it in their particular team, that's another way to gauge for us to see, oh, that's an opportunity, right? That presents an opportunity because I did mention that I think the percent, if I'm not mistaken, BCG did a study where first year managers, I believe 80% of them were never trained. They just were put in this position because they excelled in their position. And so to think about that in a particular way is also really important, and to see that impact of how we can help our employees and how they can be recognized in the workplace. And I think not even just the managers, but also the organization. What are we doing as an organization to really recognize the strengths? This goes back to the number 2 that we were talking about, that folks are bringing into the workplace. We may have folks in the organization that know how to run a particular machine or have an experience with something in particular in that organization. And so are we really going in and looking at those strengths? I don't know if that kind of helps answer.
Yeah.
Great.
And also too, Erica, do you see now that organizations are really looking internally versus externally? I was working for an organization when COVID had happened, and employment was so crazy because some left and some didn't return. So, a lot of organizations ended up giving external bonuses versus working with their internal team members and giving them tenure bonuses. Have you seen a shift, Erica?
Great question. And I think, that was a particular one where I saw it a lot with our manufacturing customers as
Uh-huh.
well. And one thing that we've seen, and we're seeing studies come out, is, as easily as I can say, we can't really throw money at this particular problem, right? There's a way that we have to be very strategic. That's why we're bringing Toby, right? Our tactical friend Toby from HR needs to also be strategic and think long term of what that's going to look like. And we are seeing a shift actually in organizations where we're seeing this particular area of folks being trained internally because one, obviously cost is
Yeah.
big. If you think about the turnover, I think the average for an employee, I just read the other day, was like 4,000, depending on, it could go up to 20,000 depending the industry, right? So
Uh-huh.
that's one area, the impact that it has on our business. Two, the brand, the reputation that this has for our organization, which then impacts who we're bringing on. That's an important piece as well. But one thing that really shows is the message that we give our actual internal employees, right? So for some folks, even if it's like 50 cents more an hour, some folks may go down the street. But however, if we're able to talk about the other things that employees care about, like, can I feel that I am, that I feel that I'm human, my boss cares about me, I'm being recognized. We are seeing that in studies. We actually have studies that you could, I'll give you the QR code to scan at the end of this, where you can access all of our research, and data is free and available to you, where you can see that we see what employees are wanting. Besides pay, there are other things in the workplace. So yeah, excellent question.
Awesome. And you
Okay.
have something that just came through the chat as well.
Oh, right. Thank you. Let's look. We're using J1s and H2B programs a lot lately. We have a lot of people that come back year after year, and we don't have to retain. It's great. Oh, I love that. I think this is, if someone typed this in the chat, I think this is another thing that I didn't present it in the presentation, but for example, in the upskilling and the reskilling, as we're having labor shortages, this is one thing that we need to talk about as well. I think if we look at opportunities for sponsorships or what this looks like to retain folks, you have to be able to present other opportunities of why folks want to come to your workplace. And I think J1s and H2B programs are an excellent way to look at that. Folks want to come. There are organizations like they're investing in me. They're really going to invest and really care about me being here. That is an excellent opportunity to keep and retain that staff. So thank you for sharing that. That's a wonderful way that we're also seeing as the market is shifting and as our population is also aging. So I am going to be wrapping up here, almost close to the end, on some of the ways, again, talking about AI and what it's doing to environmental social governments. Again, in this whole area that we're talking about, if we're looking at it from an environmental perspective, there are many areas of technology that are helping in these particular areas to like monitor and to really see the impact in the environment. One particular thing, Janet, I'm currently staying in a Marriott hotel, and I have my water bottle because I'm used to a water bottle in Colorado. But actually, there are very few places that sell plastic bottles in the hotel, right? There's
Right.
places that have refill stations. And so I know more and more hotels are going towards that direction as well, but it also presents an opportunity to save, not only for the environment, but a cost-effective place as well. So we are seeing organizations take into that particular place and use AI to help. The social piece, we talked a little bit about that social area, health and well-being, the mental health perspective. Financial inclusion is another big one. I didn't spend enough time talking about this one, but the way that we help our employees have a better understanding of financial planning or financial well-being is critical, because this has direct impact into how our employees are showing up in the workplace. And so being able to have this element in the workplace is a great opportunity for our employees. And then the governance piece, again, regulatory compliance, public sector efficiency, corporate governance, all of these ways. I know all of us on this call in HR love compliance, right? It's a topic we all love to talk about. But if we can use AI to really help us also in measuring and looking at some of those aspects, we're seeing on the governance piece also being used. And how can we take action here? One thing to think about, the environmental social governance. If you hadn't heard of the word, this may be something you're going to be hearing more and more. It is here to stay. I think it's an opportunity for us to think about what does that look like. Okay, maybe not so much of a macro level, but on a micro level, things that are small, like exactly what you just talked about, Janet, earlier. What are the opportunities we're presenting internally in our organization to help our employees stay? And then we had someone in the chat talk about that. That is one way that we can take action on a micro level. What does this work? How can we do that? The other area is make efforts, show the receipts, right, of these promises. Basically, the one where I was talking about the surveys, are we listening? Are we impacting and taking action into what our surveys are saying and acknowledging it? I think that's a big piece where we can help create that trust. And then the third piece is considering the use of AI to help maintain and improve these initiatives. And I think in the world of people leaders and HR, that's something that we're going to be seeing more and more. And just by, I'm curious, in the chat, how many of you have used ChatGPT? I just kind of want to ask that one. Janet, have you used ChatGPT?
Oh yeah, my son showed it to me.
Yeah, what'd you think?
It's crazy, if you want to plan a party and you put there, I want a theme, this theme, what do I do? I mean, it is insane what comes out of it.
Right? Great point. Yes. And I see someone in the chat saying they use it every day. I've seen folks, when they talk about job descriptions or how do I have this conversation, or, you just type in there, like, for example, how do I have a conversation with my boss about getting a raise? And then you get all these points. This is there's of course a lot of work that is being done right now in AI. That's something at UKG we talk about all the time. Our product team talks about all the time. It's continuous in learning. But the way I think about it here, and I present a lot is change is hard, as any of you know, especially in HR, right? Change can be really hard when we're implementing something new. And I think that was a big thing for us in the world of, like, for example, smartphones. And I think yesterday we just saw forgive me the name, the new Apple, Dimension VR glasses. What was that, Janet?
That headset, the VR
Yes,
glasses.
yes, the VR glasses. And we are already actually talking to more organizations that are using VR for, like, their onboarding, to give their employees this onboarding experience in HR. So it is here to stay. We just really have to find ways of what's going to work for our organization and for our employees, and to really think about it in that way. And with that, I think 2024, what we're currently living, is really giving us an opportunity to really distinguish us in our organization from the talkers and the walkers, right? How are we really going to implement these changes? How are we going to provide a competitive advantage and move forward? I think it's an opportunity to really think about and drive. So here's my first QR code that I have for you. Please stay on the call because I have a really cool QR code at the end. This one is to download the Megatrends and predictions. You can scan this QR code and have additional resources as well. Here's where you can also find access to a lot of the other research that I'm talking about. And I'm going to give an opportunity for that. And Janet, you are providing the slides, is that correct? Or
I would have whoever's interested in Erika's slides, I would encourage you to send Erika a notification. Is that
yes,
okay with you?
totally. And I will actually give my contact at the end. And for those of you who stayed through this presentation, I actually have one more thing here. So I said don't leave yet, but you can actually scan this QR code and you will have the opportunity to win an away luggage or any item from Coach valued up to $500 from UKG. So this is, again, for those of you who stayed, please scan this QR code and fill out the information that you need, and we will actually get you in a drawing, and you will hear back from either myself or someone on my team regarding this. So this is an important QR code.
Erika, this is cool. Very generous. That's so cool. Thanks.
Yes, so hopefully you all stayed for all of the info. And then I'm going to go to the next one. This is the third QR code that I have, and this is for if you need to send me an email, ask me a question about the research, or if you just want anything else that I can provide. It is free access to all our resources at UKG. and I can help you with that.
Awesome, Erica. You are just always, every time I speak to you, I learn. Erica is just full of knowledge, and she's someone that if I email, I hear from her immediately. Thank you so
Uh,
much, Erica.
Thank you, Jen. I really appreciate my time with you all. And if you have any other questions, feel free to email me. It's been a pleasure.
Thank you so much. Once again, please make sure that you scan your code to be entered to win the away luggage or the $500, wow, coach valued gift certificate from UKG. Make sure you scan that. Make sure that you reach out to Erica as well. Tell more. Are you on the call, sir? I wanted to introduce to you to the director of the foundation, Tal Moore, if you're here.
Hi, Janet. I am here.
Hi.
Hi, Erica. Thank you. Great presentation. If Janet agrees, I think we certainly put your slide deck. We'll take the coach QR code out because those that stayed deserve it. Slide deck. But,
Absolutely.
Janet, let's put that in our members only resource page too. That's a great thing to access.
Absolutely. Will do.
Yeah, so Erica, thank you. Again, hi everybody. I recognize almost everybody I think on the call. It's pretty cool today. Alva and Abby and Mariella was on there earlier. Good to see everybody. I just don't know if you can see me. I don't know if my camera's showing. But
Yes,
just
we
want to
see
say hi
you.
real quick. Okay. Erica, thanks. And I've taken away a lot from today. For example, I can give you 10 or 15, but the financial inclusion. I know that was a quick comment, but a very important one. We are hosting, Nahara's hosting a finance compensation and benefits summit in New York City at Mutual of America headquarters. And I'm going to make sure we include that statement and a conversation around it, financial inclusion. Laura Lee with Mutual of America has her pillars and talks about retirement and financial independence for our indigenous members, not just employees, but retired individuals. And that financial inclusion is very important. But Erica, everything you shared with us today gives us a lot of thought. The theme, of course, I take away from a lot of this is AI. Just yesterday, I had a great conversation with our attorneys that work with us on tribal human resource professional certification and about an inclusion of AI in our third program. So you'll see that coming up. And yeah, good stuff today. Our TMP program is our tribal management professional program. I'm going to make sure that our facilitators put an AR statement in that as well. I think it's caught up and beyond a lot of us as far as facilitators. It's here. I don't see it going away either. How do we use it, embrace it, not ignore it? I'm the old guy. I'm of that silver tsunami they call. I'm at the winter of my career, but still learning these new things are important to me and everyone else. But Janet, thanks again for facilitating. Erica, thank you for your time for today. And I think there's going to be a lot of good follow-up questions to you, Erica. Thank you.
Awesome. Thank you for having me all. This has been great.
Janet, back to you.
Tal, thank you so much. I included in the chat box for our summit that we will be hosting. I just added the link there for you. And Tal had spoken about the tribal management professional certification. I added the link there as well. And did I lose Tal?
I'm here.
No, he's still there.
Oh, Tal, did you want to give away a certification today or a registration?
Yeah, let's do it for TMP. And Janet, I'm going to lean on you on how you want to do that. If you want to do the spin the wheel, or we don't have a QR code nifty like Erica did, which is a great idea.
I know, that's so awesome,
And yeah,
right?
for those of you've recorded who has been on throughout the hour, let's record that, and then we can reach out to whoever has won that. And that'll be for our Mystic Lake location in March. We're having a certification there. So we'd love to have one of you join us. And it could transfer. If you want to give it to a colleague, that's fine too. But Janet, if you'll take care of that, that'd be awesome.
Yeah, check this out.
Oh, here we go. Oh, she's ready to go. Are you spinning the wheel? Ah, Sophia got excited because her name showed up first. Here we go. Oh, Sabrina. So, hey, Sabrina, Janet can reach out to you after this session and would love to have you join us. And again, if somebody on your team can join, if you can't, we'd love to have them at Mystic Lake in March. We'll share more information. Cool.
Oh, wow.
Again,
Thank
thank
you.
so much. I want to follow up with you as well. So hope to see you at the annual summit. UKG, thank you for your partnership. And I'm sure we'll be hearing more from you and a lot of information. This is really good stuff. Thank you.
Awesome. Now, does anyone have any minute comments, anything for Erika on the line? You also are equipped with all her information, so I'm super excited. Any other closing? If not, I want to thank Erika for being on our session today. Truly appreciate you. Morgana, can we see the QR codes again? I think
I can share, Janet, how about I can share with you with the participant list that you have? Does that work?
yes, that would be
Okay.
great. Morgana, I'll send that over to you. Thank you. Awesome. Well, once again, Erika, thank you so much for joining us today. Sabrina, if you can stay on the call with me so I can get some information for you. And thank you, everyone, for joining us today, and have a great rest of the week. Thank you.
Thank you, everyone.